Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast, a very eventful weekend of Husky hockey. Sadly, not all good news, but we definitely have a lot to talk about on this episode. So, Weldie, sitting here with Andrew, and before we dive right into the going-ons of the your beloved St. Cloud State Huskies, I do want to make an announcement that as of December 6th at 9:24 a.m. I officially am out on Whamaggedon. So that is the end of my run for December. This is one of the earliest days that I've been out on Whamaggedon. So I think last year I made it to about the 21st or 22nd. So but the good news is here, I can enjoy it for the rest of my time, the rest of December. That's good news, bad news of Whamaggedon is, you could, if you're out early, you can jam onto it for the rest of the month. But if you don't, then you miss out on a lot of Wham. So that's kind of a bummer. So, Andrew, are you familiar with Whamaggedon? I see you looking a little bit confused.
I am now. I just Googled it and I'm winning.
Oh,
apparently.
There we go.
Because I've avoided.
I mean, you haven't, because I have listened to Last Christmas by Wham. So I would say you're losing now. It's kind of like the game. You remember it was like, everyone's always playing the game, but if you think about the game, you automatically lost the game.
Yes, and I'm sure now that I'm aware of the game that I'll now lose the game. Because you spoiled it. I know, and I know. You're right. You are to blame. That is exactly the long and short.
So, for everybody else, Whamaggedon happens every December, and basically, it's the rules is just once you listen to Last Christmas by Wham, you're out, and see how far you can go. Rules, you can't sabotage anyone. You just have to go through your normal course of the Christmas holiday season. But when you hit Wham and you hit Last Christmas, you're out. But then you can feel free to jam to it the rest of the month. So, like I said, it's bittersweet when you lose, because therefore I don't have to worry about it again. All iterations of Last Christmas are fair game. They don't count. It's got to be specifically George Michael.
Well, Wham. I mean, that's Andrew. That's Andrew Ridgely Erasure.
My apologies.
Is that the most ubiquitous Christmas song? I would have thought that the Mariah Carey. What's that one? All I Want for Christmas Is You. Well, then you don't have the fun Whamaggedon. You don't. I think that's the main reason for the game, right? So that people can say Whamaggedon. Yeah.
Whamaggedon. And also it's it's a popular one, but not one that's going to be played every 45 minutes. All I Want for Christmas, I think it's taking over the holiday season.
It's a lot. I've heard that against my will multiple times already this month.
So if everybody else, if you've already lost Whamaggedon, or let me know the time for the rest of the month here that you are that Whamaggedon did end up getting you, because usually sooner or later it gets you. But please send me a message and let me know.
And it's a good news that we are strict about not violating DCMA laws.
Correct.
Because we would have just put a clip here and ruined everybody's Whamaggedon.
You can't sabotage. That's not in the spirit. That's not the holiday spirit of Whamaggedon.
I think I'm getting it. I'm catching on to Whamaggedon.
So well, we'll see how we'll all place bets on when Andrew ends up falling victim to Whamaggedon.
It'll be tomorrow, at
probably
12 noon on my lunch hour.
Probably the case. So. Let's get to the recap of the weekend. So I'll toss it to the recording here, and here we go.
The Omaha Mavericks visit St. Cloud, and Huskies fans get a dose of bad news before Friday's opener, as nationwide crud leader Isak Posch is announced unavailable due to a lower body injury. That means Jimmy Gray takes center stage between the pipes for the Huskies. Omaha draws first blood when Jimmy Glynn scores at 9:01 of the first period. Huskies would respond in the second period with Warren Clark notching his first collegiate goal 4 minutes into the second frame. Omaha answers back as Zach Erdahl scores his sixth goal of the year at 12:13 and looked to take a 2-1 lead into the third period. But Tyson Gross has something to say about that, tying the game at 2 with an unassisted goal at 17:49, and then putting St. Cloud up 3-2 with a goal in the last 20 seconds of the period with a nice assist from Ethan Acoin. The lead would be short-lived as St. Cloud's third period woes continue, as Erdahl picks up his second of the game and seventh of the season just 22 seconds into the third, finishing a nice dish from Brock Bremer, and we're all tied at 3. It would stay that way through regulation and into overtime, and Omaha finds its 3-on-3 magic once more, with Sam Stang getting the game winner on a breakaway goal. The two teams square off Saturday, and Brett Larson announces the extent of Posch's injury, out for 10 to 12 weeks, a huge blow to the Huskies. I blame the Hawktwa girl. It's Gavin Enright's turn to make his case as the goalie to lean on in Posch's absence, and it doesn't take long for Omaha to get on the board, 41 seconds to be exact, as Cam Mitchell takes advantage of a bad Tyson Gross giveaway to go 5-hole on Enright on a breakaway. Again, it takes a period to fully wake up the Huskies, and wake up they did in the second period, outscoring the Mavericks 4-0 in the middle frame. Austin Bernovic gets the offensive explosion started, rifling a shot past Simon Latkozy on the power play just over a minute into the second. Gross strikes again at 13:05, also on the power play, with a fancy double deke in front of Latkozy. Mason Salquist would extend the lead to 3-1, tipping in a Colin Relf shot from the point, and Josh Litke would make it 3 for 3 on the power play with 20 seconds left to make it a comfortable 4-1 lead going into the third. Tyson Gross would pop in his fourth goal on the weekend at 4:10 of the third, getting one by Kevin Riedler in relief for Latkozy. Former Husky commit Garrett Piano-Niemi would cut the deficit to 3 with an Omaha goal at 12:09, but Enright stands tall with 27 saves on the night. Huskies win 5-2. With the overtime loss on Friday, the Huskies pick up 4 out of 6 points on the weekend. They now look ahead to Grand Forks in a big series against North Dakota.
Yeah, so that was a series of hockey to be played. And bearing everything, bearing the, might as well just get into it. Posch's injury, and that is, just terrible news for somebody who's had just a heck of a start to the season and a heck of a start for the Huskies, and just to all of a sudden have a Dylan Anhorn flashback of, he's in the line chart, he's ready to go, what we think, and then all of a sudden, oh no, he's out, and then to hear, oh yeah, he is out for, hopefully he's ready for the playoffs. So it was just kind of a lot of parallels that I drew from that Dylan Anhorn situation.
Yeah, the luck that this team has, it's the opposite of good luck. That's for sure. And maybe we're to blame, because at least this run of fluke injuries somewhat coincided with the reboot of the show. We got the 2022 pneumonia for Renek on the dawn. Well, I suppose, it was through the NCHC playoffs and then into the NCAAs. But yeah, that. Anhorn, as you're mentioning, in 2023. We were scot-free last year, unless I'm forgetting something, but you didn't make the tournament. And now we've got Posch, who, as we mentioned last week, was on his way to potential Richter nomination, leading the country in crud, as was mentioned in the recap segment.
Very, very, very important statistic there. So
this team seemingly can't catch a break in terms of just avoiding these key injuries. Again, with Renek, that was a little different because it was right in playoffs. Anhorn, the Anhorn injury, you were able to turn that around and make the NCAAs win a game in the tournament. I guess this would be a good time for us, in terms of talking about the Posch injury, to go back to the beginning of the season with our preview episode, which at that point we were skeptical about Posch. Goaltending was our biggest question mark. coming into the season. And I remember, I should go back to listen to it, so I'm just going off memory. But I remember then, I can't remember what the exact bet was, but you were thinking significant, like over 6 games apiece for both Gray and Enright. I, in particular, pushed back on Enright. And the idea that 3 goalies were going to get, 6 games isn't significant time, but it kind of is. It's unusual for 3 goalies to get that kind of playing time in a season. It's not uncommon to have 2 goalies split. We saw that with Casser and Bassey 2 years ago. But that maybe just underlined the question mark that we had about goaltending coming into the season. And my thing was, we better hope not to see Gavin Enright that much. Well, you're going to probably win that bet.
Just exactly how I planned it too.
With the caveat that one of these 2 goalies with Gray and Enright might take the bull by the horns and get the majority, prevent the other from getting over 6. Again, I don't know if that was the exact bet, but it was somewhere in that range.
I think it was something like that. That sounds right.
Posch was on his way to pulling a Cameron Rowe from last year and playing every minute. And I would have been just fine with that, the way that he was playing. We should mention, so not to bury the lead here, it was announced on Friday, lower body injury, which we don't, that's all the information that we were given. Nothing more than that. And so that's when Gray gets the start. On Saturday's game, prior to that, Larson makes an announcement that speaks to Alex Fern pregame interview, saying 10 to 12 weeks for Posch.
Alex Fern of KVSC.
Of KVSC fame.
Yep.
And so, I'm just doing the math now. 10 weeks would put you in the middle of February, like the 20th of February. 12 weeks would put you past the regular season in the first round of the NCHC playoffs. So, and again, timelines can shift on both ends of that. Could be out for the entire season, even if they make the tournament. He could be back by the beginning of February. Who knows? Your guess is as good as mine. But bottom line is, he's going to be gone for a while. And at first, when rumors were coming out, maybe it's just a month. That's what I heard at first. And hey, if you're going to be out for a month, this is a good month to be out because you've got the Christmas break. But then when we heard 10 to 12 weeks, that changes the game significantly.
It's a long month.
It's a long month. And so obviously, I'm sure I wasn't alone in despairing the prospects of the Huskies season if that was the news, that we're going to be out of Posch's services for most of the rest of the season. We were talking about last week percentage odds, 75%, and somehow I was the more optimistic of the two of us. Certainly that number took a dip this weekend. We'll get into the games, obviously, but we just want to hit the biggest piece of news here first. Because I don't think, Enright looked really good, I thought, on Saturday. Gray, not as good, but I don't think we should expect, 80% save percentages. We can get to what our expectations are of this new goaltending combo that we're expecting here going forward. But obviously a big significant loss and a not great Bob moment in a program that's had its fair share of not great Bob moments over the years. Now I'd like to be the optimist, shocking, I know, but I do see the most positive effect of this. Again, Posch's save percentage was about .930 north of there. Even that was going to regress a little bit with Posch. Even anything north of .920 is going to put you into Richter territory. But even you got to factor in, he wasn't going to stay at .935 save percentage all year long. And I don't think you can expect that from Cocaine Bear / Enright, whatever the combination of goaltenders going forward, we can't expect a .930 save percentage because, again, that puts you into Richter territory. It's just not an easily replaceable performance from any combination of players. But best case scenario is that these guys put in like an average goaltender, like 900 to 905 save percentage, somewhere in that range. And then here's really, and we saw a little bit of this on Saturday, I thought. The best case scenario for me is that this team realizes, hey, we can't rely on Isak Posch to save our bacon every game. We've got to step up our game defensively and especially offensively, because we just can't win 2-1, 3-2 like we were prior to the point that Posch got injured. If this offense can give you 8 goals on a weekend like it did this weekend against Omaha, and yes, it's Omaha, but 8 goals a weekend, and Saturday playing out the string in a 5-1 game there in the third period, a comfortable win. Haven't had many of those this year. If the offense can be your best defense and take the pressure off these goalies and widen the margin of victory for this team, like the margins are so thin, or they had been. And like I said, Posch was responsible for any number of wins that you want to assign to him personally over the first 6 weeks. This might be a motivator for the rest of the roster to step up their game and see this as a unifying event. And they might be a better team as a result of this in terms of the other 22 on the roster. Obviously your goaltending production is going to suffer as a result of this. But if you can compensate for that loss with better production offensively, and we saw special teams was very good on Saturday, power play. We saw better play on Saturday, at least in the third period. If we can shore those flaws up, I think that can soften the blow that is the Posch injury. Again, that's the best possible outlook that I can give on this. And I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. If we get a game like we saw on Saturday night, this team can do just fine with average goaltending. So am I crazy? Again, I'm trying to put a good spin on this, but what's your day after? Obviously in the moment, everybody is on suicide watch.
Everyone's
now
panicking.
That we've got a little bit of distance and we've got a good, at least one game under our belt with Enright. How are you processing this? How are you seeing this play out?
A little bit like Napoleon's battle plan. First you show up, then you see what happens. They showed up on Friday and Saturday with this curveball kind of thrown at you, and then you kind of see what happens there. And yeah, I thought Enright looked solid. And there were, I think, a couple of big chances in the first period where if it's 2-0 even going into the second period, I don't know how the second period shakes out, but yeah, there was one that was an odd man rush that was ended up being kind of just stonewalled, that he was able to glove it. And then there was another play where he was able to get the pad out and really, number 17, the spread eagle, was able to get to the post and able to kick that away. And then, yeah, special teams took over there on Saturday, which is obviously a welcome sign. Power play percentage jumps up to 19.5% on the year after this weekend. So that's obviously good. I will say you were a little more lukewarm on Gray's performance. I actually thought he did pretty well. I looked through, some of the goals. I don't blame him on any of the goals that were given up. Sure, some of them you're like, maybe that'd be nice to have a save there, but I thought actually that was Lidke's worst performance in a Husky jersey. I thought he was
by far
abysmal, and I thought he single-handedly, gave away 3 of those goals. Maybe not bumping into Brnovic. Maybe that got crossed up. That happens.
And Wiley shoulders part of the blame on the third goal as well, getting burned by Bremer.
Yeah,
but Lidke left Erdahl alone there too. It was a team effort.
And Lidke also on the first goal had a chance to clear it and ended up just throwing it right into the Omaha player. And then, I know a lot of people were saying he got, beat clean, but that was a deflection that was, right in front. So the angle of the stick, how that shot off wasn't where the puck ended up going. So that really fooled him there. And then even in overtime, when we're getting to clown hockey there, it was, kind of a situation where you've got to rush, and then Gross kind of, this team 3-on-3 is just terrible decision making. Gross kind of comes down, and Lidke goes off for a line change, and Gross just whistles it wide, whistles it high. They get the puck, they come back, and they're essentially caught on a change because it's the long change in overtime. And I can't remember who tried to get off, or who was taking Lidke's place. I think it was Wiley, but I'm not 100% sure.
I think you're right.
But anyway, he was burned. Like everyone was burned, and you try to do what you can to get it, and he just got beat clean by a heck of a shot low. So I think it wasn't. I don't like just looking at Gray's performance, and I know he's going to get more of the blame, but I thought he was also a little bit tested more than Enright was after the first period, at least in Enright's game. So so I expect this rotation to just continue. I think they're probably going to go these 2 guys for the rest of the season, back and forth. I don't know what
strict rotation.
I think so.
They get a game each a start each weekend.
Yep. Especially next weekend. Maybe even go Enright here with a little more, older, a little more experience. That's the word I'm looking for. A little more experience playing up at Ingolstadt Arena. Might be something that is there, because they're at. I didn't even double check. Right, they're at
St. Cloud.
Yeah,
it's at the Ralph. Yes,
right at the Ralph. That's what I thought. So, again, I don't know his history, but I know that Bemidji's actually played them a little bit tougher than history is. Showed that the overall series history between Bemidji and North Dakota is. But I think it's going to be a strict rotation and see what who kind of comes up with it. But the defense I thought played a lot better there on Saturday's game. They kind of locked it down, and we got timely goals, which is something that we haven't really had this season.
Yeah, let's the Friday game, we can kind of dissect that. I thought a pretty ugly game. One of the worst performances of the year. The coach disagrees. We can get into that a little bit later, but as far as Gray goes, I agree that he was hung out to dry. The first goal is the one I'd really want back. I thought that was the worst of the goals that he gave up from his perspective. The other 3, I agree, it was defensive breakdowns, and Lidke involved in all 3 of those. But when we're talking about good goaltending or difference-making goaltending, it's coming up with big saves on grade A chances that your defense doesn't help you out with. I mean, that's when we talk about good goaltending, we're not talking about the easy saves. We're talking about the difficult saves. That's the difference. And I do think that if Posch starts that game, they probably win that game. It's probably 3-2. And it doesn't go into overtime. Coulda, shoulda, woulda, of course, but that's the difference. And it's we're talking about razor thin margins, and that's kind of what we talk about when we're talking about goaltending. The worst save percentage among goalies, talking last year, among goalies who played a significant chunk of the season. We had Ethan Pearson at Princeton, 15 games. He had an .855 save percentage. So that tells you that the worst goalie in D1 is going to save 85% of the shots. Average goalies around 900 to 905, like I mentioned. You really get into the elite category, we're going to talk about 92, 93% save percentages. If we're talking about 85% of saves, generally any goaltender, 99% of goaltenders are going to make the saves 85% of the time. You give up 30 shots a game, that's between 3 and 5 shots. That's the difference between bad goaltending and elite goaltending, is about 3 to 5 saves a game. And I don't think Gray made like a game saving stop. And again, I do think that his defense didn't give him any favors in the Friday game. As far as going forward, again, we can maybe, I do want to dissect the Friday game further, but go back to last week. We kind of touched on philosophies when it comes to which goaltender do you go with, and especially when we were talking about the women's team with Carrico and Ahola, and talking about last year with Chobak and Ahola. And it is variable by the team, by the coach, by the goaltenders that are involved. We have the somewhat recent track record of the Castor and Bassey rotation from the 22-23 season, which was very structured in the first half of the season, for most of the season, probably 75%. And then Castor kind of gradually emerged as the bulk starter towards the last quarter of the season. I could see that playing out. I mean, if it was me, I would start Gavin Enright on Friday in Grand Forks. And if he wins, let's say, I would bring him back on Saturday. Like I'm not a slave to a tandem situation that this needs to be cut and dried, one game off, one game on. But as we've seen in the past, it has worked. So Gray's style, he earned the nickname Cocaine Bear, put it that way. So and that can be effective, I think, in smaller doses. And again, we're talking about 85% was the worst save percentage last year. Enright wasn't too far off from that, from 872 save percentage with Bemidji. So we're going on a 1-game sample for both of these goalies so far. So I'm not ready to say give it to Enright until he craps the bed. Like, if you want to do a one-on, one-off, at least in the short term, you've only got these 2 games until Christmas break. So, I mean, you don't really need to get into a rhythm. But once the second half starts, I think you only got 1 off weekend after the second half starts. So it's going to be interesting to see how Larson manages this, because this is a curveball. He perhaps had visions of splitting time at the beginning of the season or prior to the start of the season, but with Posch's emergence, it's just tough to take him out of the lineup when he's playing so good. So this wasn't a problem he was anticipating to have to solve, but it's gonna be a major piece going forward that you've got to take some care and attention to how you're handling your goaltending situation. And I'm just curious. I have no obviously inside knowledge as far as how they're going to play this, but I saw enough at least this weekend that Enright seemed to be the better. He put in the better of the 2 performances. I'm not ready to say he's the better of the 2 goalies, but just based on that, this past weekend, you said he had to come up with some big saves. That was like a partial 3-on-0. One of those. Yeah. I mean, not all 3 players touched the puck, because there's 2 of them, but it gave me flashbacks. Do you remember when North Dakota had that 3-on-0? Like it was like from the neutral zone. Like all 3 players touched the puck. Would that have been Lindgren? I can't remember. I think it was, and he made the save.
Yeah, he did.
3-on-0s. They don't come too often, especially in 5-on-5 play.
They don't know how to come down with it. It's like, that's right. What do we do with it? There's an extra guy here. Yeah, Yeah, just looking over. Enright 0-3 in North Dakota.
And also, I just saw too. He had one other start against North Dakota at Bemidji, 0-4 in those games.
So
again, it's North Dakota and it's Bemidji. He's playing, with the Beavers at Grand Forks, and obviously North Dakota hasn't been like the best over the last couple of years, but still tournament level teams for the most part. So I wouldn't use that as like if anything, I would use that as he's got experience in the building at least. Gray's never played on the road in NCAA, and he's only played against Omaha. His only start last year was at home against Omaha as well, and now this year against Omaha. So get him to see a different team maybe. So I was not impressed on Friday with Husky's performance. Came out very flat, I thought, and Omaha had the jump. It was evident, and it gave me flashbacks to like the February funks of years past, where you can kind of tell within the first couple of minutes whether or not this team is fully engaged, or if it's kind of going to be a sleepwalk. And it was more the latter to me. So second period's been great this weekend, and it's been their best period all year. And we saw that this weekend with 7 goals across the 2 games in the second period. Warren Clark, first ever collegiate goal, stick taps to him. He hadn't cracked the lineup in a while. I almost kind of started to forget that he was on the team. Bufflin was getting more of the opportunities as the 7th defenseman. But I thought he played really well. We'll get into this for the Saturday game. The Jack Rogers, who got his first action in a while. Ethan Aucoin as well, played both games. I thought Rogers was notably good. And I thought getting that Aucoin, Gross, and Ingram line fully back together. I've been calling for this for a while. I know Ingram was obviously hurt to start the year. Aucoin had a stretch there where he was out, unavailable due to injury. But reunited, and it feels so good. Is that how the song goes?
Yeah.
4 goals for Gross. Ingram's off the schneid with 2 assists. Aucoin, a great setup on Gross's second goal on Friday. Ingram as well. I mean, that was a key play where it's kind of all of a sudden St. Cloud has a late flurry in the second period there on Friday to take a 2-1 deficit into a 3-2 lead. And then shortly after Gross's, last minute goal in the second, it was maybe the last 10 seconds, Ingram rings one off the pipe. Like if that goes in, you're up 4-2 going into the third period. You probably don't even take that game to overtime. But Ingram, I mentioned the second game in CC, he was a little bit better. I went back to look. He had 3 shots on goal that game. He had 3 shots on goal on Friday, a couple more on Saturday when few assists, finally getting some points. Prior to that, Saturday in Colorado Springs, he had 1 shot in the previous 5 games combined. So he was not just silent. He was like a nothing on the ice. He wasn't even producing any shots towards the net. And so seeing him, because I remember it was either on Friday or I think it was on Saturday, one of the power play goals, where he's still stuck, like he's a foot or 2 away from the boards. And he likes to set up there. And he finally moved towards the net. And that's when the play started to develop, and they ended up scoring on that power play because they scored on all 3 of their power plays on Saturday. It's like I was yelling at come closer to the net. Don't be stuck by the boards there. And he's, again, I think he's been more assertive. He's been less timid. And we saw that finally break through with him hitting the score sheet, which was huge to see. But yeah, Friday, so you had the good second period, but then another listless third, which it starts poorly with Omaha tying the game right away with an early goal in the first minute. We mentioned that play with Wiley getting burned and Litke out of position. Erdahl, who we didn't know if he was going to play. He'd been injured the last couple of games for Omaha, but he had a good game for the Mavericks, and just not enough push. There was another one of these third periods where that was the 9th straight game where they went scoreless in the third period.
9?
nine times in a row where he went, put up a donut in the third period. And then overtime. I mean, it's never a good idea to go to overtime against Omaha.
Yeah,
And
there's two
we
teams that
saw
you
what
don't want to
happened.
go to overtime against, and we did it in back-to-back weekends.
They're only Omaha's with that game. They had won. They were 3-0-1 in their last 4 games at the Herb after Friday night. All 3 of those wins were in overtime. One in 2021, one January of 2024, and then in December of 2024. So, yeah, getting into the 3-on-3 with them, I was not surprised at how that game ended. Frustrating too. I saw put up a tweet, tongue in cheek, of course, but I'm like, here's my starting 3 for overtime, and I think I put Rosborough, Ports, and Reiners, because I just picked 3 guys that you really wouldn't want playing 3-on-3. It wasn't like that far off because it was Saltquist who plays on Ports' line, Ashan who's with Rosborough, and then I think it was Wiley who's playing defense. I just don't quite understand the philosophy of overtime with this team. But I've been talking for a while. What else on Friday stuck out to you? Were you as morose about this team's performance than I was?
Yeah, it just felt that it was listless out there. And then we started to get some things on track and get going. And you're talking about a coin, and I thought he was just wonderful all weekend. I was happy to see that, and probably one of his best plays didn't result on the score sheet when he's coming down on a 2-on-1 when Gross has the puck and he ends up tying up the defender, like just taking his stick away and and making sure he doesn't have a play, and Gross just doesn't hesitate on that, just rips it by Lacozy, who, like you said last week too, Lacozy kind of lukewarm against St. Cloud State, only has an 857 save percentage overall against St. Cloud State. So when you're talking about your range of goaltenders, he is definitely below average when he plays the Huskies. So, yeah, it was. I the big thing I don't understand, and maybe I'm not supposed to understand, but I was really hyped up for Gavin Thorson to come in, and I was kind of thinking Bernovic or Thorson, I'm excited to see what they can do. And, the points haven't really came for Thorson. Obviously, had a goal waved off against BC. That doesn't help. But I think he's a solid player out there, but he's all weekend he's on with
You're not doing
him
any favors there with the line mates.
Yeah, and I get it. It's like, who else are you going to put out there? I mean, obviously you're going to play Saltquist. I guess he has enough intangibles, and I guess he did get on the score sheet on
scored on Saturday.
So maybe I
Grease
should bite
pan
my tongue a little bit here.
Tip goal and right in front, garbage man goal. A lot more of those.
Good. Because otherwise he looked like Nate Day out there. I mean, there was one time that Ingram came down and he had a chance to shoot and ended up passing it over to Saltquist, who just flubbed on it. And I'm like, huh, all right. That's I think that was in the line change or something along those lines, that they were on the same line. But at any rate, I was just kind of looking, I was like, yeah, I mean, Thorson just doesn't do any favors right there. And then, the other injury that we haven't talked about, Damon Gardner.
That's right.
With him being out, which maybe opened the door for a coin. And I don't know if there's a way you can take a coin out.
You got to keep that line together. But
you got to keep that line together. So
they were clicking last year. That's why I mentioned that they need to reunite them earlier this season.
So maybe that's an instance where, you take Ports out and put Gardner back in, whatever the extent of that injury is. I don't know that at all, but it's Yeah, if we get the offense clicking and we get everything rolling again, I like this team's chances. We just have to tighten up a little bit better defensively and keep it rolling here on the power play. And those are definitely the things that stick out to me. I loved O'Coin's play. I'll just kind of keep hammering that. For him to be out for so long and then come back in and just be on another level, that was great to see. But I just don't know what we're doing with that line. And then I was surprised to see on Saturday Ryman is out of the lineup. And I get that you have to get Jack Rogers in there as well, but I didn't look at Ryman as any reason to take him out of lineup. So I was a little bit surprised to see that.
Yeah, I tweeted that I would have preferred a Ports for Rogers swap in the lineup. I agree about Thorson. He has underwhelmed. I have confidence that he's going to grow into it a little bit. I can't even say that it's a size issue or because he's a tenacious player. We already know that. He doesn't shy away from getting into action and getting the attention of other teams in terms of his style of play kind of being a pest. Line mates aren't ideal for him. I think I've seen enough for this season. I'm not completely writing it off, but Josh Singer has been a major dud. I thought another bad weekend for him. He's not clean defensively. Lots of sloppy. He makes Jack Peart look like Paul Coffey out there, and he doesn't even meet Peart's offensive production. Like I can live with that.
I think you gotta update a little bit. I don't think our listeners in Paul Coffey. Maybe. Okay, Cale McCarr.
I'll just keep. I was gonna keep St. Cloud local and say Nick Perbix. But it just if you're not gonna counterbalance some sloppy defensive play with offense, then I'm not really sure what the value of you on the team. And for him to be a guy that we thought of as like a power play quarterback option, it doesn't even seem like he's getting that ice time. So he's been a big disappointment. I wanted to bring up though, so it seems like we're simpatico here in terms of being not so impressed with the team. You wouldn't think that if you were to have asked Brett Larson. And I know this is more a you thing, which you like the coach interviews. I tuned in to KVSC on Saturday, the pregame show. At least I listened to them both games for play-by-play, as is standard. But I did tune in early because I saw that Alex Fern was the one who had reported that Larson was saying 10 to 12 weeks.
Double duty for Alex. He was there. I bumped into him at the women's game as well. So
he's doing sideline stuff for TV.
Ice side for both.
And play-by-play for KVSC this past weekend. And so I just was curious to see if there was any other details regarding Posch. There really wasn't. It was really just the 10 to 12 weeks. There was nothing else divulged about that. But then we're talking about the Friday game. I just pulled out some of these quotes because I wanted to quote him accurately. The only disappointing part was the first 10 minutes. For 50 minutes of that game, it was one of our best games of the year. That's the best offensive punch we've had all year, the most connected we've looked. Defensively, it was other than the first 10 minutes, we didn't give up many chances. It was actually one of our best defensive games of the season. One odd breakdown on the second or third goal when we left a guy alone in front of the net. I'm thinking he's referring to the second goal, which is the Erdahl goal where Bernovic and Litke bumped into each other, and then Erdahl was left alone in front. Because I think for what I was describing, that's what sounds like the second goal, which means he's not making any comment on that third goal defensive breakdown or the overtime bad change from Litke, which is strange. And with that overtime too, he kept saying, "Give me a 60-minute effort of our game, not 50." And I'm just thinking, well, there was more than 60 minutes in that game, this is what worries me. We joke about Jim Rich not knowing overtime rules. Here's Larson on Fridays. Essentially, that's a tie going into 3-on-3. Well, yes, it's a tie. It's not essentially a tie. It is a tie going into 3-on-3. So we get the point. The pairwise is split. We actually moved up in the pairwise last night, which parenthetically was wrong. They went in on at 7th in pairwise, and they ended the night at 7th in pairwise. So they didn't move up. Those ties do help you. They don't hurt you as much as you think. I think that he thinks that over the 3-on-3 is just, well, it's a tie in the pairwise. So, which would go a little bit to explain why his line pairings are just so random and like you're not playing your best players, because that's what you would do if you didn't think that overtime meant anything. And that's troubling because, yes, a overtime loss at home is closer to a tie than a loss, but it's not a tie. And an overtime win is more than a tie. And as we mentioned, he's getting the thing where it took me about a year to glom onto this as well. The RPI has the split 66-33 overtime split, and then there's home and road weightings additionally to that. But the other criteria with common opponents and head-to-head, this goes into those criteria as 1-1 on the weekend, not a tie. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if we need to get this information over to Larson. I hate 3-on-3. Go back to any one of our shows. We hate 3-on-3.
We're vocal about
but it ain't a tie. And you've got to give more of an effort on your 3-on-3s. That was the most like shocking. Like at this point, I expect the low-key gaslighting about we played really well and going out of your way to say like certain areas like defense played spectacularly, where that's certainly not the game that I was watching. I'm used to that at this point, but the overtime thing worried me because that seems like a incorrect interpretation of what overtime actually means.
Is this going to be our first official nominee?
Lowell Sun Sports Memorial Foot and Mouth Award nominee.
Like this sounds like it's going to be the leader in the clubhouse right now, because
and that is an exact quote. There is an ellipsis in there. I took out a little bit of a tangential comment, but that is word for word Larson's comment there. I transcribed the comment.
I get not being down after a loss and you know, still being the cheerleader and the rah-rah and everything, but I really hope he was just speaking in really, really broad strokes and not actually. I hope he knows. I will say that. But like
it's on my mind. Like
it goes to the fact that his overtime pairings are just off the wall.
Yeah, I don't know. It's on my mind. Like was listening to a podcast. Did you ever read? I'm gonna Bowdlerize myself because I don't want to have our Apple rating changed. But there was a book in the mid 2000s called On BS, but it's actually BS, not the letters BS. The guy went on like the Daily Show. It was kind of funny, but it's a good read. It's only like 50 pages.
Okay.
And it's this like egghead, I don't know, professor, Princeton maybe. It was one of those colleges out east. And he makes this big argument about the difference between lies and BS. Because that was this like unvarnished BS, what Larson said in those comments. It's like on its face, I don't think it's meant to be truthful. That was like his distinction. Where it's like the liar has truth in mind as they're making the lies. The BSer has something above. Just they're not really concerned with the truth. There was like a ulterior motive to the BS. And if it is, like, I just don't want to throw my guys under the bus. I get it, but it still sort of insults my intelligence. And I'm not, we'll get to like Adulski later. I think he's much better in terms of his public statements. Cause I don't feel like I'm getting sold a line when Adulski touches on his team's performance. But especially with this Litke, I mean, this is your captain. Like, you'd think that you'd want to hold your guys accountable, especially a guy like that in a leadership role. I'm not asking to go John Tortorella on the bit and send the guy to Siberia, but just say, hey, we hold these guys to a higher standard than that. That wasn't an acceptable performance, and yeah, we know that losing Posch is a big loss, but we've got to play better than that against a team like Omaha, which we should beat. Like, I just something about it rankled me, and especially the overtime stuff gave me a bad feeling that there was not a better communication there about the implications of the game. So I don't know. I just wanted to bring it up.
At the same time, they did respond and they did win handily on Saturday. So
they did. I will say pretty uninspiring first period. But other than that, it was maybe their best performance of the year. And I've mentioned this as well, just being able to have a comfortable lead and not having to sweat out these wins. Like, you had the Michigan 4-0 game, but even there, it was a 1-0 game going into the third. There was an empty netter and then a garbage time goal on top of that at the very end of the game. Still a pretty tight game. But other than that was the only other win. Well, yeah, the Miami 3-1 win. But all the other wins you've had, the other 7 wins prior to Saturday, were all of the 1-goal variety. And because of that, like, you've just got to expend all that energy throughout the full 60 minutes. When you have a 5-1 lead halfway through the third period, yeah, that's when you can go into the dull stall. And it's maybe not so much stalling, but just playing smart hockey. You don't have to make Superman moves. You can play your full 4 lines, no short shifting. The other team is going to be making more home run, desperation type passes and plays. Just defend against those, play smart, and you don't have to feel like you ran the Boston Marathon after these games, especially in the second half. You know, you've got one off weekend, like I mentioned. Once the second half starts, you're going to need games like this where you can sort of coast to victory, relatively speaking. And like I said, we haven't been able to do that. And a team like Omaha, which I don't think is a particularly good team, I thought it was a very good response. And especially those areas that we've mentioned so much this year, power play and third period play, great improvements on Saturday. And hopefully that's the kind of performance that we see going through, because again, you can't rely on Posch anymore. And so maybe it's definitely a change in the direction of your season. Hopefully it's not the death knell of the season, but that you can actually use this to get better as a full unit.
Who's your pal?
It's got to be Gross. I mean, we should say, I mean, the first goal on Saturday, I mean, we're seeing Enright for the first time, coming off a not good year for Bemidji, and obviously the position that we're in. I think it was the first shot on net for Omaha goes in, and that was a bad turnover from Gross. I don't really know what he was doing there. And coughs the puck up, and guy goes in and shoots and scores. Again, I think it was the first shot on goal. And it's like, gee, is this going to be how this season goes? Are we going to get swept by Omaha at home, even though one of those is in overtime? But so at that point, I'm like, well, I don't know. He scored 2 on Friday, but gave 1 up on Saturday. I think the 2 goals later in the game for Gross with 4 on the weekend. I mean, not many players in recent history have scored 4.
Herbie goal of the year nominee.
You're gonna put it in nominee status. That
down low.
That was on Saturday. Yep, the little deke.
Yeah, that
was sweet.
To forehand to backhand. And then a coin, his, behind the net and able to hit the brace behind the net, fool that Cozy and get it over to Gross as well. That was a heck of a play. Kohuski's Woo also agrees. Gross. It's pretty obvious there. Anytime you score 4 on a weekend, it's hard not to give it to you. But again, I want to shout out a coin. for coming up, being put on that line, and that line just absolutely clicking. Omaha had no answers for it. So that was good to see. I was bullish on Omaha at the start of the season, and I got some egg on my face here. I don't really know what to make of that team. I don't think they were I don't think they were decent. It's definitely a weekend. St. Cloud could add a better response or a better outcome, but four points, 4 out of 6 points. So you reduce it, it's meatloaf. So it's
Yep.
It'll have to do. And now we're gonna switch gears here to talk about traveling up to North Dakota, and it's a North Dakota team that definitely has been a little bit lackluster here, and almost lost Friday's game against Miami.
Should have lost.
Yeah, of course. Right when I turned it on and I was able to watch some of it, they ended up scoring and ended up getting coming back to win that game, which is a bummer. But they also had to fight on Saturday game against that Omaha team, and so they were still able to get a sweep, but it wasn't a pretty looking sweep. So North Dakota is a team that I think St. Cloud State is. It's going to be a good litmus test. I think for this team that it's a power team in terms of history that's down right now, and I think it's where you can really take it to them and really catch them by surprise. I think you can come out with a majority of the points this weekend. Their goaltending again has been absolutely abysmal this year for North Dakota. And it's, I'm fairly optimistic. I don't, this North Dakota team doesn't, it's got obviously some good talent, but overall, I think we can match it. And I think if we play like we did for the 40 minutes against Omaha, I think we can, really make it difficult for North Dakota, who's been just not looking good as of late.
Yeah, we mentioned last week North Dakota struggles this year, sort of indulging the Fireberry crowd, and mentioned if they drop one of these games to Omaha or to Miami, the situation could get dire in Grand Forks. Some of those North Dakota fans, 4-2 lead for Miami with 5 minutes to go in that game. They get to 4-3, pull Septenfelter, tie the game, and then score in the last minute. And Miami just on a tangent. I mean, we said it's a one conference win last year, and got the new coach. Thinking, wow, no way up, no direction but up, right? Well, there's 0-7 with one overtime loss to the Huskies. Their only conference point at the hands of the Huskies this year. But winless through the first half of the season, 16 games in the second half, 8 of those against Denver and Western. They might go winless. They look worse than they did last year, which is saying something. So for North Dakota to be as close as they were to dropping that Friday game, and even the Saturday game, as you mentioned, 4-2, not looking like super hot in that game either. So this is a North Dakota team. Like I said, it's good to get them at this point in the season that they are a little bit down. There is a lot of talent on the team, as is normal with North Dakota. They're able to get high-end first-round draft pick type talent. A couple of those guys, Sasha Boisvert, who's leading their team in points right now, 15 points in 17 games. He had a good weekend in Oxford. Back-end defenseman E.J. Emery looks like more of a stay-at-home guy, but he was a first-rounder as well, and he's been solid, if not point-producing. They lost Jackson Blake over the off season. He was obviously a big star for them in his time there, but Jaden Perron, Cameron Berg, we've seen plenty of him with Omaha and North Dakota. He's kind of off to a slow start, but he's been injured. And so hasn't played the last couple of weekends. Actually, he's off to a good start with 8 points in 7 games, but he's been out since their Duluth series.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if he's going to be available for them this weekend. He's played well against the Huskies in the past. So circle him. I mean, they brought in this Carter Wilkie from RIT. He had a 40-point year the last 2 years for RIT. He's kind of been a dud so far with just 4 points. It's finding the transition from Atlantic hockey to the NCHC is a steep learning curve. I always butcher his name, Livanovich. Am I saying that correct? From at the point, Livanovich. I always go that way, and then I'm always wrong. But he's having a good year, and he had a good year for him last year. He's putting up points for them this year as well. So I mean, they've got talent. It's just it really hasn't clicked for them so far this year, and they've had earlier in the season they were looking good one weekend or one game, then the next game they'd kind of lay an egg. It's been, depending on the type of team that they're facing. Like they look pretty decent against Duluth. Duluth doesn't look to be very good, and able to sweep Miami, but no real prize there in taking care of one of the worst teams in the country. This will be a test for them, and I like the matchup with St. Cloud. I don't know if I'm going to go out and say that they're gonna get the majority of the points this weekend. Should say 6 games into the conference schedule, St. Cloud's gotten points in each of those games, which is impressive. Yes, you did drop that 1 point to Miami, which sticks out like a sore thumb, and dropping 2 points to Omaha is probably not going to look great at the end of the year. But you've been able to find a way to get something out of all of your conference games so far this year. Really, for me, if you split in Grand Forks, I'm not going to complain too much about that. I guess we'll see. I can complain. Rewind the show if you want to hear some of that again. But generally, splitting at the Ralph is just okay with me. You mentioned Gardner. Again, it's a bad weekend for Gardner to have an injury because a little bit overshadowed by the Posch injury. And so that's kind of forgotten. That's like page 8 news when Posch goes down. But a Warroad kid, you'd like to think that he'd want to get up for games in Grand Forks, kind of in his neck of the woods. We'll see if he's available this weekend. And again, goaltending. I'm curious about how they play that. Who's going to be starting on Friday? Said I would go with Enright. Would you go with Enright on Friday, or would you stick with Gray on Friday, Enright on Saturday? What would you do?
I think you go into the weekend with Enright Friday, Gray Saturday in mind, and then depending on how Enright does is whether or not you give him the option.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that develops over the bulk of the season here. But I'd be fine with a split. But this, if you're wanting more, if you're greedy, this might be the best time of the year to face him up at the Ralph. So it's always a good trip. I haven't been there obviously in a few years, but have you ever made it to the Ralph?
I have. I ended up drunk on YouTube in one of them. I think
as one does.
As one does. That game I believe ended in a tie. I remember Nick Dowd, I think, scored the game tying goal in that one.
Do you know what year that would have been? Because my first trip there was in the Frozen Four year, the 12-13 season, and they won and tied there that weekend. So I'm wondering if that might have been the same.
No, because
Dowd would have been on the team.
Yeah, Saturday they got crushed. It was
okay, so it wouldn't have been that year.
They lost 6-2, but it was 5-0 after the first period.
I think that was the year before, and that was Mike Lee.
That was Mike Lee. Yep.
For part of it, I think he was pulled halfway through it.
But he was yanked. Yep.
Well, it was Mike Lee against North Dakota. I mean,
yeah, of course. Again, goalie getting injured. He had a lot of injury problems as well, Mike Lee. So, but I think it's typical SCSU fan. And the caption or the comment is, "This is when you know your hockey team sucks," or whatnot. And it was just, I don't know, I was drunk. I was just kind of dancing like a fool out, standing in the crowd and whatnot. It was fun. Grand Forks was a good time. But it was just, just a jerk fan on Saturday really just kind of ruined everything for me. Just one of those just in your face, always yelling, and it just kind of ruined that whole experience for me. And it's just one of those like, God, you really take your sports a little bit too seriously when you act like that. So that was kind of a bummer. What I remember, that and Denver for me, for two reasons, kind of stick out to me. Denver was another one, and I was like, they don't have fans in the building at Denver, so it was like this guy like purposely came up like 2 rolls to scream in my face that they scored their goals, and I was like, congratulations, you lost 3 rip the night before. So, but yeah, that's that was my Grand Forks trip. And another side note, might as well get on this story too. If Eric Zamora is listening, no, I'm not going to tell that story. But
off air.
Yeah, that'll be for a different time. My wife listens.
The Huskies Hockey
so.
Podcast after dark.
Yeah, exactly. Version. That's for the Patreon members.
That's right.
No, it was kind of cool because for the WCHA Final 5, we had the same tickets every year, and there was always a group of North Dakota fans in front of us. So obviously over the years, we started getting pretty friendly and just talking to each other and whatnot. And then sure enough, just some random time at the bar, like I just bump into them and they're like, "Oh my God, what?" So it was like kind of this reunion. And of course I'm hammered at some bar. I can't remember what it was called, but it was kind of like a mini reunion, and it was like just talking about the games and whatnot. So it was kind of one of those cool little experiences that college hockey fans can appreciate. That I probably won't get those types of experiences anymore with the end of the conference tournament at a neutral site. So yeah, it's kind of a bummer. But,
pour one out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I've been there. I think I've been to the Ralph 3 separate occasions. Yeah, 2013. I'm just looking this up. January of 2013, 3-1 win, 2-2 tie for the Huskies. Then I just went to one Saturday game in would have been 2017, an overtime loss. That was when overtime meant something. 5-on-5. Remember that was. Do you remember this? It was the game where Chalowski got burned in overtime.
Oh, yep.
And it was that game. Mike Gornall. His only 2 goals of that season for North Dakota was in that game. And one of them was an overtime winner. And then this would have been actually before that then. 2016, the U18 World Juniors, which was a fun, just went up there for a day and went back. Team USA played. I mean, there wasn't many fans there. It was a Saturday afternoon, if I'm remembering correctly. And U18s aren't the draw that the U20s are, but it was still cool. I think we saw 2 games, and one was Team USA. I can't remember who played the other game that we watched, but I bring that up as a bit of a segue in that there are some World Juniors news with St. Cloud. We saw that the preliminary roster was announced, and both Austin Bernovic and Colin Ralph making the shortlist for the preliminary roster. Now, there is a round of roster cuts, maybe 3 or 4. I think the final roster is about 25 is what they'll send to Ottawa this year, and I think the preliminary roster is at 28 or 29. So it's not 100% certain that either Bernovic and or Ralph will make the final roster. We know that Larson will be going to Ottawa.
Larson does.
He'll be by the hand of David Carl. They're kind of bringing back the entire coaching staff. Raboyne's involved as well. So be nice to see at least one of those players. I have no inside track. See like what Jake Baskin thinks if Brnovic and Ralph have the inside track to make it. But it'd be nice to see at least one of them play in Ottawa. And, basically we'll only be missing one game if they do go. That St. Thomas game. Second half starts January 10th. The World Juniors end the Sunday before that, so the 5th of January. We've seen sometimes, like Peart, I think, when he was playing his 2 years of the juniors, I think they kept him out one of the games the following weekend. But one of those was a European trip, so you have a bit of jet lag to deal with. An Ottawa trip, you'd think, wouldn't require any additional rest, meaning that they'd be back for that Duluth series to kick off the second half. But keep an eye on that. Like we mentioned last week, we would like to get Baskin on maybe the week going into World Juniors, starts like Christmas time, right around there. Hopefully we can get him in there. He's always got good insight, and it'd be especially alluring to watch the games if we've got some St. Cloud participation on the ice. So congratulations to both Brnovic and Ralph.
Random box score, I was incorrect. So it was 2010, 2011, and we didn't tie. We lost 3-1 on the first.
Is that like a tie overtime loss, like a Larson misconfusion kind of thing?
Nope, that's just Travis was drunk at the game and didn't exactly remember how. And if you want to know how drunk I was, again, typical SCSU fan, is at least the start of the YouTube.
Can you're on the YouTube video?
Yeah.
Because the win in 2013, which was the Friday game, those YouTube highlights, you can see me in those highlights. I'm clapping after I think Hanowski scored one of those goals. So I made YouTube there then too.
Nice. Were you sober?
I think I was, actually.
Oh, well, you're one up on me then.
Well, I wasn't drunk, I'll put it that way. I might have had one or two in me.
The 3-1 game, it was Drew LeBlanc scored from Brett Barda. And then
that was the only Huskies goal that game, 3-1.
Yep. Okay. Fratton from Malone, and then Malone from Trupp and Fratton, and then Malone from Genoway and Blood.
Was that Fratton's big year?
Yeah.
The year where his drunken antics cost him the Hobie?
Yep.
And about tracks.
That does. Allegedly. We should say allegedly drunken habits. Allegedly cost him the Hobie. So
was that Mike Lee as well? For the Huskies? It would be him or Dunn. Dunn was the only one that could have beaten North Dakota.
Yeah, Mike Lee.
Who would have been would that have been Eisness? Who was the North Dakota goalie?
Oh, don't get me started. God, I hate Brad Eisness.
I don't know how I picked a scab there, but
I was in college hockey fantasy, like we just did it, pen and paper. We just drafted for
and
conference
you took
games.
Brad Eisness
first overall because of the year before. He was bar none the best goalie in the WCHA. And then not only that, but like the way the points were, like the whole first round was everybody picking goalies. So it was like it didn't really matter. And so it's like, okay, I got the goalie and I'm going to pick the best goalie. And then Eisness has a terrible first couple of games. And then Aaron Dell takes over the reins. And
who ended up being a better goalie. I mean, Dell played in the NHL for a little bit.
Yeah.
Can't say the same thing about Eisness. I'm pulling it because I don't remember Eisness being like great. His best season would have been 9-10.
Yeah,
9-14 save percentage. That was good back then. I don't know. I mean, it's good. It's just not like goalie of the year, but that's a good season.
And you got points for wins and
not 24. So
yeah, so
we had a lot of wins. Yeah. I guess in that case, North Dakota goalies of that era would have been a good. So they're like running backs for at least in that era. Like I'm sure it's all different now, but everyone would take a goalie first.
Yeah.
Was it just WCHA or was it NCAA?
It was just WCHA.
Okay. All right. So sorry to bring up some.
Yeah. So essentially that tanked my whole. Everything.
So you had him that 10-11 season when he put in a 7-game performance all year and an 8-12 save percentage.
Yes.
That was the year.
That was the year that I drafted
I could see why you're upset.
Oh, exactly. You can see why I hate him. And then, it was the next night, 5-0 after the first.
I remember that. That was bad.
But we at the bus back to whatever bar we went to, I kept saying, hey, the last 2 periods we beat you because we outscored them 2-1 in the third.
Moral
period.
Victory.
Yep. Mitch McMillan from Volpe and Jensen, and then Travis Novak from Taylor Johnson and Oliver Lordson.
Those are some names. So, Mitch McMillan played. Was he transfer from North Dakota? I think he played it. I don't know if he transferred from there or if he transferred to there from the Huskies. I can't remember if he was before or after. But anyway, traitor.
I think he transferred to North Dakota.
Well, and then they had another McMillan. Maybe that's why he transferred there, because I think he had his brother that played at North Dakota, who was a little bit better. I think Mark McMillan, if I'm remembering correctly. I think he was a bit of a better prospect than Mitch. So yeah, I think he bailed. So he's a traitor.
Yeah, exactly. Quickly around the horn, because we're going late and we got a lot to talk about for the women's side.
Let's just go to the women. People know what happened. They can listen to Jason Bryant. He does
that's true.
The college hockey scoreboard. There's a plug for you, Jason. So get caught up there. We talked about the Miami series. I don't know, Western and Denver. Did you catch any of that? Sentence and a half review. It's another where Western looked like they were going to sweep that series. Denver's able to tie it late.
Denver was able to
win in overtime.
To come back on that. So now let's go. Here's the women's recap.
Huskies and Bulldogs get together and it's a dogfight at the Herb. Friday's opener sees Alice Oriel getting the scoring started just over 5 minutes into the game with an assist to Sophiana Sunderland. With the goal, the Huskies break their 4-game-plus scoreless streak against the Bulldogs. Physical play from both teams as the score remains 1-0 after 2 periods, with Sani Ahola and Ave Gascon battling in a predictable low-scoring matchup. Olivia Mobley would finally get Duluth on the board at 5:40 of the third period, and the game would go into overtime tied at 1. Huskies get a power play in overtime for the second time in as many weeks, but like at Union the week before, St. Cloud is unable to take advantage. The game goes in the pairwise as a 1-1 tie, and Mobley scores the lone goal in the shootout to score UMD the extra point in the conference standings. Saturday's game, and I sense a Groundhog Day theme. Watch that first step, it's a doozy. Like Friday, Alice Oriel creates a play, and Taylor Larson is there to pot the rebound in to give St. Cloud a 1-0 lead in the first period. Olivia Mobley's all, nah, don't you say you don't remember me, because I sure as heck fire remember you. As she again knots the score at 1 early in the third period, this time on the penalty kill. We look headed again to overtime at 1-1, but Duluth is able to beat the weather and get back to Pittsburgh as Clara Van Weeren's wrister from inside the blue line finds a way past Sani Ahola with under 3 minutes left in regulation. Mary Kate O'Brien would add an empty netter for good measure, and alas, there'll be 6 more weeks of winter in St. Cloud.
So I ended up going to Saturday's game. And it was the most confusing, weird feeling leaving that, because it was a combination of like frustration and confusion that that Saturday game happened and how it unraveled like it did. It was, I thought overall, like all weekend, it was a fun series. Like both games, for low scoring games, it was intense. There was a lot of hitting. Pone decided not to call anything for body checking, except she finally called something like in the third period. I was like, or in the second period on Saturday's game, I'm like, oh, okay, that's the one you call, after there were just plenty of hits everywhere else. But it was just one of those things. It was like I felt like they were in control. Like North Dakota or Minnesota Duluth couldn't really do much. And then, it's the behind the music. Then it all came crashing down. And you're on the power play, you give up the shorthanded goal. And then I don't know what it is about long range shots from Duluth players against St. Cloud, but Chobak gave up one last year. That was a head scratcher. And then this one from Ahola too, was just a swing and a miss on her glove, ends up finding the back of the net. And it was just like, just to see everything collapse. It was just, it was a combination of just a frustration and anger and confusion. Like it was like, that was another Meatloaf weekend, just ready for you against a team that, nationally is a big power, and it just left a just really bad taste in your mouth for, I think, how well they played on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I'm most frustrating result of the year. It's up there. I mean, you had the Mankato loss, which I thought was ugly. This one was just one where
this was in a different way.
It was different.
Yeah,
because you felt like if you get to overtime, again, then you're getting some points. There's a pairwise benefit.
It's a pairwise tie.
It's a pairwise tie. We're just getting into overtime. It's a tie. It's a pairwise split. That's the quote. And if Ahola saves that, this game does get to overtime. I'm fairly sure of that. Were you in that corner at that point? I feel like you moved, because I think that corner was empty.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you would have seen that final goal, because it was a 1-on-2, and so the two Husky defenders, but right inside the blue line, it's long range, kind of a nothing shot. And I'm wondering, was she screened at all? I don't know if you saw it with your vantage point, if you're able to see anything there, or as if you said, she went to catch it and missed it. It's just baffling.
No, I wasn't. The first two periods I was down in that spot, but the third period the boys wanted to walk around. They wanted to actually sit in the chair back, the black chairs on the second level.
My kind of fans. I like that. I like those box seats.
I think actually they just wanted the seat, because it's spring loaded, it pops back up. I think they just wanted to keep getting that. So,
okay, I get that.
So that's where we're for the third period. But I was like, I want to be down here for the second period in case they score. But it was just me and the boys. Clara had a birthday party, or not a birthday party. I think it was just a gingerbread house making party, whatever.
Fun.
So yeah, I wasn't allowed to go to that. So I just go to the hockey game. But it was so we did move, but even that, it didn't look like she was screened or anything. It was just, I don't know if it was like just at the right height where like some of the windows from the black like background blended in, like the old, you had to take out the trees in center field at target field because the hitting eye, it was distracting or whatever. I don't know if it was something like that, but again,
the suites, the black glass on the suites.
Yes,
that's right? What you're blaming. Okay.
Well, I'm not blaming. I'm trying to find some reason.
That's what we're going with. We're going to go with that.
Like, just a wonderful goalie. Just that's not a goal that she gives up.
She made several good saves that throughout the whole weekend.
Yes,
for both. I mean, Gascon's obviously great too. There was a couple of breakaways for the Huskies. I mean. Very good goaltending. It was not something that came as a surprise. We sort of figured low scoring games this weekend, and because it's a goalie battle that we're anticipating, it's just a letdown to see the second game decided on just a save that this is one of those 85% saves.
Yeah.
Where everyone makes that save. It's just the 99%. This is the 0.1% that a good goalie doesn't make that save. And it's a big loss. I mean, that dropped you down to 11th in pairwise. Again, they don't have Ustro doesn't have a editor for pairwise. I'd like to see for pairwise. I'm not
Okay.
disparaging their journalism
You can.
in this segment.
In this instance.
But so I'm just curious, like if you just went to overtime,
And
even if you like,
CHN isn't going to do anything for women's hockey, so don't. So they don't even have that.
It's not saying anything because at least we have a scoreboard, and I have box scores at the very least. But I don't know what the effect of this was or the difference if you would have just went to overtime, like an overtime loss, or if you went another tie. I bet you if that was the case, you'd probably be at least a spot or two higher. And just as you said, a wasted opportunity. 2 third period leads, and add that to the Huskies 3-2 lead going into the third on Friday. Not a good 24-hour stretch there for third period leads for this team. And
Adulski, I thought actually summed it up really well in his press conference. And you know what? I'll just play the clip. Roll it.
You know, we've talked about numerous times that there's a bulk of that team that, they've cracked the code a little bit. You know, they played in the NCAAs. They played in the Final Four. They know what that looks like. And there's an expectation that they're going to do what's necessary in crunch time. We, for whatever reason, no matter how much I tell them, they're a super good hockey team. I still think in some of those situations, they still doubt themselves and still are unsure that they're worthy to win a game like that, especially against them. So that part kind of sucks.
And I think he summed it up really well that, just this team just ends up, like it's right there. It's like all of a sudden they lose focus and they don't feel like it's actually going to happen. So they think about it. They're in their head too much and then everything just collapses. Whereas Duluth's not that team. They've been there. They expect to be there. They expect that these situations, going to come out in their favor. And sure enough that it does. And like just more and more, I believe in this team. I really like how this team is structured. I really like how they play. I could nitpick about a couple of things and maybe I'll get to a little bit about their shooting choices and whatnot, but it's definitely a situation where like once they start believing that that's going to be the case, that they can do it and they can skate with anybody. And they've proven that this year. It was just a couple of bad stretches really against Wisconsin that you can argue that those games got away, but it was just frustrating to kind of see it end like that, and especially for both of those games.
Yeah, I don't think that there's a ton that separates St. Cloud from Duluth.
No,
it's
that mental I think it's the mental block that does it.
It very well could be that intangible rather than a talent advantage. Obviously, on the score sheet, you're going to see point totals higher for Duluth, the Van Weerens, the Mobleys, O'Brien. I mean, they're going to have. I mean, and part of that is you were able to rack up a bunch of points last weekend against Vermont. But don't tell me that the talent level is so wide between these two teams. If St. Cloud has the aspirations of making the national tournament finally, I think Duluth is the perfect model. Like a team like the Gophers, you're not going to be in the position to be recruiting players like Primerano. Like you're not going to get the standout players in prep Minnesota hockey. You're not going to be the first option for a lot of those players still at this point. Perhaps as the game evolves, we should hope that the talent pool at the prep level continues to increase, and then St. Cloud's going to be in a position to be in the market for those kind of players. But you're more closely aligned with Duluth in terms of resources and whatnot. Obviously, history and the longevity of success in the program is different, but with the talent on the team and the coaching that Adolski's and the kind of culture that he's brought and instilled at St. Cloud, I'd like to think that the difference between these two teams is something that you can surpass. And this weekend, you could have won both of these games in regulation. And it's more the offense. Again, you put up 2 goals in each of these games. I mean, prior to 1-1 was the score late in the third period on Saturday. And you had plenty of chances to make that game 2-0. Same with on Friday. Get the first goal of the game each game. Soriol again showing some good playmaking ability, scoring the first goal on Friday, setting up the second one. The first goal on Saturday. Good to see that, but another weekend of Gentry making a lot of plays, but not cashing in. Henderson had a breakaway opportunity on Saturday, or on Friday, I should say.
Sunderland hits the post.
Yep. Sunderland had
there
a bunch
were a lot of
opportunities.
chances in that second that didn't fall.
So, I mean, it's we mentioned it last week about getting these shots on goal. It's not like you're putting up 15 shots on goal each game. You've been able to press action towards the goaltenders. It's just a matter of finishing chances, which is the deciding factor, the separating factor between a team like St. Cloud and a team like Duluth. And it's frustrating because as Adolski said, and Adolski's just, he's got a way about him that he's a captivating speaker, and I don't get the BS quotient from him. He's a straight shooter, and I can read, and it's authentic. I can read the frustration on his face and in his words.
Yeah.
This stung him. That loss on Saturday was a gut punch, and I'm sure it's the same in that locker room as well. But
they got a month to think about it.
And then similar to the men's side, in an even tougher assignment. Once you start on January 10th in Duluth, same as the men, same weekend. You want to go up and catch double dip, men's and women's in Duluth, you can do that next month. But after starting on January 10th, it's 7 series back to back to back to back. No off weekends. And 10 of those 14 games are on the road. Again, you're in the position, you're in a conference where you can make up the ground of the pairwise. With the gauntlet that you have here and the road heaviness of it, is it something that I'm confident about? No, not necessarily. But we said the margin is razor thin here. If they're able to find that extra something and just convert on 1 or 2 more chances per game, talking about the difference between good goaltending and elite goaltending in the men's segment. Same thing with an offense. We're not even talking about getting St. Cloud into elite offense territory. This is just game-changing offense. Just 1 or 2 more goals a game. And if that needs to come on a power play that clicks better. One thing about the road heaviness of the second half, I don't think that the Herb plays well for the Huskies. Like on the women's side, even especially. I almost like this team on a smaller sheet. I'm not blaming that clearly, but I feel like they are better suited to play on a NHL size rink. So maybe with that, for the second half schedule, playing most of those games on the road, maybe you can take advantage of that. I don't know. My big thing is you just got to find the net just a few more times a game, and that's the difference between this team making the tournament and not. But as we are now, I think it's going to be hard for them to get into a position where they're hosting games in the playoffs. So that means you're going to have to probably win, even if you get points in half of those games against the top 4 in the second half, which is a tall enough task. Even if you do that, you're probably still going to need to win a playoff series to get into NCAA territory, which means probably going on the road. I mean, right now, Ohio State's actually 4th. I would say it's probably more likely that you're going to see Duluth or Minnesota in the first round. And all 3 of those teams, there was benefits and negatives to any of those or all of those matchups. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but I'm just laying it out there. The task is a tall one. And as things shuffle out east, seems like ECAC is settling into. They've got 4 teams in good pairwise position now. Hockey East seems to be improved from last year. It's going to be a difficult needle to thread to get a 5th WCHA team against that Eastern competition. So it's a tall task, like I said, but it's not one that I think St. Cloud's very close.
Yeah.
It's just, it's so close, but yet kind of far away. But this weekend was a killer because I think that if you at least got points on Saturday, we'd still be in a position where the task wouldn't be as tall. And that's the frustrating part.
It's, when I was hearing Adulski, and you're completely right when talking about his gut punch feeling, because I have been very vocal about how he intimidates me to no end. But like, this was a real moment where maybe he lets that tough guy act down, or he knows how to play it back at these times where he turns into just this, like, I don't know, like, I don't want to say like a different person, but like you see a different side of him. And it was like, you can see like you were saying how powerful of a speaker he is. You can just tell it was just straight from the heart and straight from the emotion of like, we're right there. And just to see this time and time again happening, it's frustrating. So it was nice to see that side of him. I just wish I'd see a little bit more happy Adulski, because that's I think that's the next step, and maybe we'll see that in the next half of the season, because they'll have a long time to think about this game, especially this game. Friday also had their chances as well. Again, it was a strong, I mean, it was 2 teams battling, and 2 teams that clearly ate each other. Because I thought it was a very physical series. And I thought they let nearly everything go on Friday. I'm
generally in favor of that, of swallowing the whistles. It did seem to push that boundary just as much as you possibly could. And they did clamp down more on Saturday, as you mentioned, calling a few more penalties.
Mm-hmm.
But it certainly got to the point where it was close to being out of hand on Friday, and then that spilled over onto Saturday as well. And so, but like I've said before, like, this team needs to play physical in order to win these games. And so I'm not opposed to that. It's just, it was pretty close to uncontrolled play, which is not what you want.
And again, I've said this before, but if you think that there's, it's not tough hockey, or there's no hitting in women's hockey, go to a game, because there's plenty of
still a contact sport. Body checking necessarily isn't allowed, but that doesn't mean contact doesn't happen, and doesn't happen often, because it does.
And that's where something that I think, the Huskies maybe could do a little bit more, or take a page out of Duluth, is that I feel like the Bulldogs were really good at running those subtle pick plays, and some of them not so subtle, to kind of create open space and to create chances. And I think the Huskies can kind of take a page and learn how to do that, to kind of create some space. Just inadvertently get into the defender's way a little bit more often, and just kind of act it up like it was a little bit of a bump that wasn't supposed to happen. I thought Duluth was phenomenal at that, and it was really frustrating to watch, because I mean, clearly they weren't going to call interference like they should have. But so if they're not going to call it, you might as well use it to your advantage. The other kind of nitpicky thing that I wanted to say was a little bit about the shot selection. I thought Gasson gave up some pretty juicy rebounds shooting it low, but anytime we had a good shot, looked like we tried to pick a corner, and we either ended up sailing it wide or just right into her glove, and was able to kind of get it down. I kind of think back to, some of the Farrell's goals where it was that kind of muckraking, greasy type, or Gentry's goal, just right in front of the doorstep. I'd like to see a little bit more of that. Because I think Gasson was giving those hard rebounds off the pads, off the pillows. So if you get a hard shot low, I think you can generate some second or third chances there that a little bit higher chance of going in.
Yeah, I agree. Duluth just has, like you said, some of their players, like that Caitlin Kramer, who's a freshman of theirs. I think she's a solid player. Mary Kate O'Brien was a pest all weekend. I'm more partial to Ashley O'Brien, her twin sister, who's doing some good stuff over at Boise State this year. But Mary Kate is doing quite well for herself as well this year for Duluth. That was a bit, but no, she's a good player. But yeah, it's just frustrating because this is a team that it was right there for you. You had the opportunity both games, and it's frustrating that you couldn't at least get a split. Like just a 3-3 weekend would have been just fine. And not only were you on the precipice of that, but you were close to a 6-point weekend. Yeah. So blown opportunity. It stings. And like you said, you've got a month to stew on this, and we'll see how they make that adjustment coming into a key second half. And I don't know if watching the game on Saturday, I don't know if Maxon was saying that Kariko was injured or was unavailable. I mean, I wasn't surprised that Ahola got both of these games, but I'm wondering, it's now been 2 full weekends without any Kariko.
And she wasn't dressed.
Really? So
yeah,
Hugendam was the backup?
It was just her. It was just Ahola and Hugendam were on the bench and on the line charts. So
well, again, if you're injured, this is the time to be injured, I suppose, because you got a month off here. But I'm not basing this on the game-winning goal on Saturday, but just more that Kariko has been very good herself this year, and Ahola earned that Union weekend. She earned the start on Friday, even going into Saturday, had no problem with that. And I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of Ahola down the stretch here as well, but it's good to see. I mean, Kariko's been a big part of the first half as well, and so I was a little bit surprised that she's been absent for a few games, and I don't know if that could be injury related. We saw injuries affect Ahola at stretches of this year as well too. So every team gets them. We're talking about the men's side. You're playing Omaha. Lucky for them was out. Maybe their best player. This happens in college hockey on the women's side as well. So, I mean, this is part of the course of a season is you're going to have key players that have significant times off the rink. Gentry went into some injury issues last year. So the teams that are able to overcome that, generally those are the teams that are playing in the last weekends of the year. We'll see if St. Cloud can find something. Like I said, I don't think this isn't a difference between. This is not like Bemidji, where we need an entire roster overhaul. And I'm seeing too, we mentioned with Sorial mentioning on the Dump and Change podcast that she was a McDonald recruit. It reminds you that this still is not
the other coach,
the other coach, the old guy.
Never referred to by name on the Dump and Change podcast. Always the other guy, the other coach. He's like
Candyman. If you say his name 5 times, then all hell breaks loose.
I think that's Beetlejuice.
But it's another outdated reference that Alex Fern wouldn't get. But
hey, Beetlejuice just got a sequel.
Candyman was just remade too. I need to see the remake.
There we go.
Great soundtrack, Philip Glass soundtrack in the original.
Do you need to see the remake?
I heard the remake was pretty good, and it's different. It's been updated. So I've been recommended to see the new Candyman. But
gotcha. I only know of Candyman by Christina Aguilera.
Well, it's basically the same thing. So,
okay, gotcha. Which, by the way, if you think that song is about licorice, you are wrong. It is not. So So just be careful when you read the lyrics. Make sure you're not in a public place.
There's some older people who you say Candyman, and they're thinking of the former pitcher John Candelaria, who his nickname was Candyman. So we're hitting all the bases. We got Gen X, we've got Gen Z, we've got Millennials, we've got them all the bases covered. Where the hell was I? Sorial. Yeah. So this team still isn't completely Adulski. His fingerprints aren't on this entire roster. We're still churning through the old guy, and that's not to say that all of his players were duds. I mean, Sorial and Gentry. I mean, some of your best players, Ahola for that matter. But I've been seeing it seems like he's staking his claim to northern Minnesota a little bit. A couple of recruits from Roseau that he's locked down in recent weeks. I am excited for the future. If you again look back at his resume when he took over North Dakota, it took him. I mean, his first 2 years, I think he won 5 games total, something like that. I mean, he took over there. They had one or 2 games the year before he took over. They were terrible. And it took him a few years to get settled there, but within 5 years of taking over, he was taking them to the NCAA tournament. I don't think that's an unreasonable trajectory when we're talking about St. Cloud here. And if anything, he's still above schedule if we're even talking about the number of players that are still not his recruits. So it's the fact that we're at the point where we're just a hair or two off. Was it last year? I think they were 10th in pairwise at the final pairwise at the end of the year, meaning 2 spots out from an at-large. You're going to be right around there as well this year, I think, even if you have let's say a sub 500 second half. So it's there. It's just a matter of, you don't need to take giant strides to get to that next stage. It's just a matter of small steps. I have confidence in the long term. In the short term, not as much confidence, but I'm still excited to watch this team here, and hopefully they get rested up and healthy and hit that second half strong.
Yep, exactly. Who's your pal?
Sorial.
Yeah, clearly. I actually had a tweet out that I think she's the best playmaker SCSU has, and that's on both sides. That's men and women. I think when she has the puck and she's able to have some space, there's a scoring chance that is 5 seconds away a majority of the time. I think she is, as far as playmaking goes and creating chances, I think she's one of the best.
One of the best. I'll agree with that. I don't know if I'd go men and women, but she's a good player.
A playmaking aspect?
Again, I don't know how you're defining that. Is it like assists?
Just any type of creating chances, scoring chances.
Again, you're kind of hitting me on the fly. I mean, off the top of my head, there's a handful of men's players that come to mind quicker than Sorial. But for the women's side, I would definitely put her. I would agree with her. Best playmaker on the women's team. Sure, I'll go with you on that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's I love her game, and I'm really excited to see kind of how her career is going to end up here at St. Cloud. So
just a great skater. It's more like from a playmaking standpoint, you can have that, stake your claim to that. As far as from a skater, I would say she's the best skater on the women's team.
Yeah,
I'm not going to go cross gender. I'm not going to make too large of a claim here. Just from the women's side, I think she's maybe the best natural skater the team has, defense included.
Yeah. Anything else kind of around the horn? Or is that we're just going to direct them to Jason's podcast?
We could, yeah. No big upsets to talk about. I mean, Wisconsin swept Mankato. No shocker there. It has implications from St. Cloud's perspective. Still 2 games in hand for Mankato. They make them up this weekend with Bemidji. Even if they sweep that series.
Friday's game, though,
It was tight.
ended up being 2-1 and a scoreless third. So it was.
For some reason, I thought that was 3-1. I didn't watch it, but
no.
Yeah, just
So
2-1 at Mankato. But I mean, just kind of looking at Mankato as being in the rearview mirror. We mentioned it might be more of a look out for Mankato rather than being able to hop into home ice territory. Mankato's got Bemidji this weekend, then everybody will be even in games played in the conference. But even if they sweep that series, which is probably, you can probably assume that it's a home series for Mankato, they'd still be 2 points behind the Huskies. So it might come down to their series at Mankato in the second half. St. Cloud series, I should say, is that might be between fifth place. I don't think there's a giant difference between fifth and sixth in this conference. Again, you're probably going to see either the Gophers or Duluth in if you finish fifth or finish sixth. But you don't want teams to hop you. So,
yeah.
But at least you're going to go into the second half in fifth place. We know that. And yeah, we get Duluth to start the second half, and they've just been. I just hate playing them, just from both sides, like men and women. They're similar kind of teams, and I'm sick of them. I've been sick of them for a long time. No offense, Dan Jacobson, but you never like them, and they proved it again this weekend with the kinds of physicality that was on display. It's definitely a budding rivalry from that side of the action, and from that perspective, it is nice to see a genuine rivalry kind of develop in front of our eyes.
Mm-hmm. Very much so. All right, some questions. Posch injury. We talked about that quite a bit from Aaron. Is the season over because of that injury? I don't think it's over, but it's certainly going to make it a lot more interesting.
So I know it was 75% last week that I said 75% chance St. Cloud will make the tournament, and I think you were at 65%.
Mm-hmm.
I said that 75% it would tick down. It would it be above 50? Like, are you 50% above or below?
I'm still above.
Still above?
Yeah.
I think I am too. It'd be a couple of ticks ahead of 50. Like, it's pretty close.
I'm thinking I'm actually still at 65.
Really? So this Posch injury had no effect on your outlook of the team?
No. And I think that's more for where they're sitting at the pairwise right now. And a lot of the non-conference is done. I mean, the big shuffling that happened over the pairwise was Dartmouth, but that's an Ivy. So they played less games, but they went from 3 to 14, which everyone knew they were going to drop down.
No, they're out. So right now, no ECAC team would be in at large. So they're out of the top 16. CC fell. CC fell pretty big down to the 20s. Dartmouth is at 15 right now. Okay, so maybe they would be in position. I thought when I looked, they were out of the top 16.
Yeah, but CC, everyone's darling and whatnot, they're sitting down at 19 right now.
I mentioned, remember that 8-game stretch for CC that I mentioned a month ago or so now, where they're played at Western versus St. Cloud, at Providence, and now they've got an upcoming home and home at Denver. And I said I said they're kind of fraudy. They look kind of like a fraud, but I said I'll stop the F word if they go 4-4 in those 8 games. Well, 6 games into that, 0 regulation wins.
Yeah,
and they've got Denver coming up.
They got Denver coming up,
so I might be whipping out the F word again pretty soon here.
Yep, I say do it.
Yeah, just 3 NCHC teams right now in the field and 6 Hockey East teams.
Yeah.
New Hampshire, surprisingly, moving on up. And again, I think that's probably riding the coattails of Hockey East having a good out-of-conference record. And teams like Boston College and Maine being really good. But teams like Lowell, who I'm not necessarily sold on, even Boston University, who got blown out by UMass. I mean, if you count UMass and UConn, they're in the top 20 in pairwise as well. So they got 8 teams in the top 19 in pairwise. That's gonna even itself out a little bit when they cannibalize each other in conference play in the second half. But as I mentioned in our first pick the field, look out for Hockey East because they had a good non-conference run, better than the NCHC, and right now it's bearing out in the pairwise.
And then I don't think we can forget Long Island sitting there at 22.
Lost to Vermont on Saturday. I figured they would drop more, but it's that road heavy schedule. Like I've said, that will keep them propped up higher than you think.
Steve Orvis, red shirt option for Posch. Seeing if we can get a medical red shirt for him. That would have to be 30% of the games played.
Is that what the rule is?
Yeah.
Because I think it's too far into the season. 14 games played for him.
I think so too. So I don't think that's going to be an option. And I think if the playoffs roll around and he's going to be healthy for that time, if you're on the bubble, I think you throw him in. I think you got to make a run for it. Especially that could throw off recruiting and all, a bunch of other things. So
let's just play out this hypothetical. Let's just say that Enright emerges here as the main starter.
Okay.
And they win a playoff series with Enright playing both games. Sweep whoever they've got in the first round. On the road.
Omaha.
Let's
probably
say.
Omaha. Oh, on the road.
Well, then it wouldn't be Omaha. But
yeah, let's
say they're 5th and they go on the road and they sweep and they're in pairwise position. They go to the X and they win a game. They don't win the tournament, but they win a game. They're in the NCAAs. And Enright has been your horse for 2 months. You go back to Posch?
Yes.
I think I probably would too. I think I would too.
I think you're looking at these numbers.
See, then you're going to come on the podcast and say you're bringing in a cold goalie into the NCAAs.
No,
that's
not
what you
in
said about Castor.
Not in this hypothetical. I'm not going to say that.
Enright put up. Let's say Enright put up a 915 save, like not Richter territory, but above average. You're still going Posch because I probably would too. Yeah.
So
let's hope that happens.
Yeah.
Any scenario that ends with the Huskies in the NCAAs at this point, I am for.
Yeah. Everything was good up until you said they win a game, but they lose. That means they lose in the championship game at the Frozen Face-Off. They win a game.
The Frozen Face-Off is immaterial. They win a playoff series and they make the NCAAs.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Would that make the difference? Let's say they win the final Frozen Face-Off with Enright winning MVP of the tournament.
Allows 1 goal on 70 shots.
And he makes Sports Center top 10, robbing Zeev Bouillon in the championship game.
Oh man!
And you're the 2 seed in Allen.
Denver underperformed.
You're the 2 seed in Allentown.
There we go, Billy Joel.
I'd like to see this play out.
Yeah. Yep. So, let's see here. Absolutely filthy goals on Saturday. Had me go from suicidal to hopeful. Is it sustainable? This team seems to be muddling through the year so far, so I'm curious if a bit of adversity with Posch out is just what was needed. You go from thinking the absolute worst to actually being hopeful and seeing some things click. And again, you're going up against North Dakota next weekend too, which their penalty kill percentage has been terrible and their power play has been a little bit suspect since Cameron Berg went down. I do think this team has all of it. It's just a matter of getting it put together. So I think it can be sustainable. And I am optimistic, as you can tell by my 65%, that it will be.
Yeah, I said it early in the show. You could turn this into a positive in terms of this inspires the offense in particular to kick into high gear. I'd love for that to happen. And getting a guy like Ingram going, getting him, I'll call it. I think he scores this weekend.
You know what? I agree.
Because I think that I like that. I really like that line. I like a coin, and Gross is hot right now. So I would expect. Right, I mean, they were number one for top line on Saturday. I would expect them to take the opening draw in Grand Forks. Yep. It seems like it's coming for Ingram,
but we're not going to do that in overtime. We're not.
No. Mason, where are you, Mason?
Yeah. Solquist, Reiners.
We've nailed down the tie. It's a pairwise split.
Rosborough.
Reiners. You got to have Reiners out there too.
Yep. What the hell was with the reffing in the women's games? Commissioner was there yesterday for Saturday's game. Hope something was said and done. I rarely call out reffing, but I'm amazed someone wasn't seriously injured. Yeah. The reffing. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I do think reffing women's hockey is incredibly difficult.
It is the checking issue,
the body checking.
It's so difficult.
That huge gray area, and they were definitely letting a lot of it, arguably too much of it, go, and it got really physical there. So, we'll see if anything changes. Probably not. It's again, we've seen a lot of referee issues. What you tweeted out one earlier over the weekend.
Yeah, well, first it was funny. So it was Bremer, I believe, who it wasn't intentional, but intent has no impact on calling a penalty or not. But he rams into Enright and shoulder into the head of Enright. The funny part about it was Enright fell back because of the hit, and the net stayed in place.
The one time the net stays in place,
and it's it's the far one right by the Zamboni, which is the bad net. So that was funny. But then it's like that should have been by the rule book, that is a 5 minute
that was
danger.
Contact to the head. I was actually
contact to the head, and it's goalie interference at the very least. It's touching the goalie in his crease, which is a major no according to the rule book, which I've recently brushed up on. So that, and then you compare that with Thorson's breathing on Jacob Fowler, and they see that as grounds to disallow a goal. Just again, I don't expect you to be the best best refereeing in the country. Just be consistent. That's all I'm asking.
So, any thought using your eligibility to bring in Shostak to campus for the second half? Goalie recruit playing in Lincoln as of right now has solid numbers there at the USHL.
Good prospect.
I don't think you bring him in.
I would not burn a full year on a half year where he's not like he's going to play every game. We saw this with Denver last year, who brought in a guy right around this time of the season. This is when Davis was hurt, and then Freddie Halleck was not good. It's kind of a desperation move, but I think in that case, I don't believe the USHL goalie that they brought in was at a level that Shostak's at. So it's not like this is the guy that was expected to take over for Davis whenever he leaves. So it's not like you're burning half a year of, a top prospect, a top recruit. Shostak's a guy that seemingly is going to be the guy that takes over for Posch, whenever that is. If anything, this means that Posch could stay another year. Like if he played the rest of this year at that 930 clip, whatever it was, that might have meant he's got pro offers to field in the offseason. This, the one benefit, I suppose, from his perspective, from our fans' perspective, not the prospects of his pro career.
Not from his
would
career.
Have hurt those, if anything. But from our perspective, this might keep him around for another year, which might mean the plan was to bring Shostak in next year, maybe get a year of him tutored by Posch, and then hand the reins over if Posch leaves after his junior year. I don't think it's, again, I'm just not at that desperation level of needing to bring in a guy, take him out of his starting position at Lincoln, and thrust him into a role. It's not like he's gonna, magically be what Posch was. So it's tempting, but I would pump the brakes on that.
And this is why you have 3 goalies, because what are the odds that 3 goalies all get injured at the same time? It's not like you'd have to forfeit a game or anything like that.
Well, it was that play where Enright took the head hit, and he was down for a little bit. You're thinking, God, if he's injured, if that's the case, you might have to bring in Shostak, because you can't run with one goalie. I don't know what they would do. They would probably bring a guy from
Christmas week transfer portal window that could open up.
Wish.
It's like in European football, they've got the transfer window.
Maybe they can bring in a guy from the AHL like Bowling Green did earlier this week. See that? Yeah. It's the Wild West. You can bring in guy. Maybe just, well, I guess the CHL thing takes effect next year, or next August, I think, of next year. So you can't bring in a guy like that, but. Maybe. But you might have to bring it if that's the case.
That got a game postponed because they didn't.
I suppose you just got one goalie. You can just say, we don't want to play. Which Michigan kind of should get the original credit for that. If you remember their. We got so many guys at the World Juniors, so we can't play Western Michigan.
The Mel Pearson special.
That was good old Pearson.
Last question, Alex Fern of KVSC fame. I don't recall ever seeing as much character out of an SCSU team. Colin Ralph making the too small sign to Bremer, which was pretty funny. Sean being pesky, Brnovik with playing with Moxie. Is this the most energetic and full of personality team you've seen in a while? When I think of like the moxie and the swagger, immediately the person that jumps out to my mind is Robbie Jackson. I don't think there has been or will be another person with that much swagger that scores a goal. I mean, he had his own celebration. He fed off, especially in away arenas. He fed off everything. I think he rubbed Bob the wrong way a couple of times with some of that, but him especially, I think it was just so much fun watching him play. I think as far as character goes, he's at the top of my list.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good. I like the word moxie. It's, I think, an underrated word, but moxie doesn't necessarily.
It's really good in Hangman too. Just throwing it out there.
If you change the X to a V, you get movie.
Mm-hmm.
Wordplay.
There you go.
Moxie isn't the first word that comes to mind with Brnovik. He's a good player. He just doesn't see. He's a business guy. He's doing his job.
He did. I think after his power play goal, he did sheath his stick though.
That's good. That's a good selling.
That was a nice little,
not too flashy, but a little bit of sword
go
play.
Full Chichi Rodriguez to make sure we drill down that Gen X crowd right there.
Yeah, it's good. I like that better than the standard is like put both arms down and one leg up, kind of like one of those. That's kind of like your just basic Selly. I was
what Saltquist did.
I kind of feel like Johnny Brodzinski. That was kind of his standard move. Easton too. Maybe just ran in the family. But see, I was a guy that when I was in my playing days, I scored so much that I was kind of a hand the ball off to the ref kind of guy.
You were Barry Sanders.
Yeah.
Act like you've been there before.
I'm like Jack Prescott. I do one thing and I do it well. Thank you very much.
So, then Dan Jacobson did say, ask if Greg Powers is the biggest baby in the NCHC. Apparently, a goal got waved off for Arizona State and wouldn't stop complaining to the officials about it for about 5 minutes. So, just whining about that. And I did see a couple of, I think it was mostly their official Twitter account was like, oh yeah, do you think we belong now in the NCHC? It's like, well, I mean, you didn't belong before when you tried to apply the first time. You didn't have a rink. So
now they got a rink with funny banners. I don't know about the so what was it? Biggest baby in the conference?
Yes.
Noreen at Miami, he hasn't been there enough, so he's a not applicable. Gabinette, he belongs like in a library. Like I don't see him really showing much emotion at all. Sandlin's kind of sour. He's sourpuss. Mayotte is a baby.
So
I think he's my guy. Larson, I don't think he really registers on that scale too much. Barry looks like a guy that, especially you get a couple of beers in him, he's probably not someone you want to run into in a back alley. Carl's kind of got that vibe a little bit, kind of like an entitled, like I all I do here is win natties. Like,
yeah, and that's the thing. I think Carl is like maybe in a different way. I wouldn't say baby, but like definitely in a, it doesn't matter, like in an arrogant way,
like a but you know, I'm just trying to make my point here. It's got front row and
like,
center.
See how good I am at
energy.
this,
right?
Like just trust me, bro.
Furschweiler's, he's cool as a cucumber. Like he doesn't rock any tie. Even he's just a cool customer. I don't really see any crying out of him. I think Mayotte's the correct answer.
I think
but
Mayotte and Powers in a
or
baby.
We'll trust Dan Jacobson, and we'll put Powers in that conversation. So. We're tied for first place.
Tied. Pairwise tie.
So whenever Arizona State and Colorado College play, that's the Baby Bowl. So.
I like it. We got to get a trophy. I've got a couple of little
tears.
Baby toilets.
It's tears in a bowl. That's
exactly.
the prize.
There we go. Perfect. So that does it. About does it for this episode of the Skizaki podcast. Thank you everyone for listening. Leave us a review. I think you'd be the first. So if you make it this far, that'd be wonderful. I'm at Weldie at More Clappers, MOAR, More Clappers on X, and Weldie at Blue Sky. Andrew, where can they find you?
At Andrew, SCSU, HHP. That's HHP for Huskies Hockey Podcast. I got it right this time.
Got it right at the first time. So.
Email address. It's been hot today. Alex Fern, Dan Jacobson gave me his Tempe review. That's Huskies Hockey Podcast at gmail.com. Always like to get some mail in the inbox there as well. So hit me up.
Perfect. Sounds good. And until next time, go Huskies.
Woo!